This aircraft was developed as the successor of the widely used Dornier Do 17 model, the so-called flying pencil. It fixed the shortcomings of Dornier's earlier design, carrying a much bigger bomb load and having a greater range than its predecessor. Though it outperformed the other German bombers of the time in most aspects, but it suffered from the conflicting requirements for the many roles it was planned to be used for. This was the Dornier Do 217 bomber, so let's see the history of this aircraft today. The story of this bomber leads back to 1932, when Dornier started to work on a new aircraft, initially intended for the fast mail delivery role. This was their Do 17 model, which, similarly to other contemporary German designs, was secretly modified to military use as well. The mass production of this type started in late 1936, and the first planes entered service with the Luftwaffe in early 1937. They participated in the Spanish Civil War, the invasion of Poland, the attack on Norway, and in the Battle of France. But by this time it was clear the plane, which was designed to be fast and nimble, fell short in range and bomb load. But this was not a surprise for the German officials, as in 1937, based on the experiences in the Spanish Civil War, already new specifications were issued by the RLM. They asked for a new twin-engine bomber with both horizontal and dive bombing capabilities, with the emphasis on improved performance and bomb load over the existing designs like the HG-111 or Do 17. I have already made separate videos covering those types, so if you want to know more about their history, check them out. Dornier started working on their new design in 1937. They used the Do 17Z model and its export variant, the Do 215, as a starting point, and basically scaled up the earlier design. The new aircraft became longer by 2.4 meters, and its wingspan was extended by 1 meter, and it featured a much bigger bomb bay, able to carry 3,000 kilograms of bombs compared to the 1,000 kilograms on the Do 17 model. But the new plane wasn't just a bigger Do 17, it featured many changes and improvements. It used a reinforced and more streamlined fuselage, and just like the export model, was powered by the Daimler DB601 engines. It also featured a very unique dive brake design, which we will talk about a bit later. Dornier also planned to modify the model for another requirement, asking for a multi-role twin-engine maritime patrol aircraft, which led to an interesting sidetrack from the Do 217 project. These requirements asked for a long-range maritime reconnaissance and bomber plane, which could perform dive bombing as well, as horizontal bombing against ships at the time was extremely inaccurate, showing around 2% hit rate compared to the almost 40% achieved by the Ju-87 dive bombers. Basically, the officials were looking for a siege Stuka and asked for a twin-engine float plane with strong armament, at least 400 km/h speed, and 1500 km range. Dornier proposed a modification of the Do 217 design under the P-85 project name. Their maritime patrol plane would have carried two 7.92mm machine guns and two 20mm cannons in the nose, had a reduced bomb load of 1000 kilograms, and instead of wheels, this plane of course would have floats. Eventually, Dornier's proposal lost out to other designs, and after that they concentrated on the land-based version, and presented this variant in June 1938. The first Do 217 V1 prototype was finished in August 1938 and made its maiden flight in October, powered by two 1075 horsepower Daimler DB601 engines. But this model showed quite poor handling and crashed a week later during a test flight. The design showed serious problems with directional stability, but the following prototypes were already in production. So the V2 and V3 models were finished soon with no big modifications apart from switching to the 950 horsepower Junkers Jumo 211 engines. The V4 model was finished early 1939. By this time it was clear the design needed modifications to fix the stability issues, which was achieved by modifying the tail fins and adding slots to their leading edges. The following V5, V6 and V1E models incorporated the fix on the tail, and again featured the Daimler engines. Because the type was very much underpowered with the Jumo and Daimler engines, the RLM wanted something that can provide considerably more power. So the V7 and V8 models were tested with the 1550 horsepower BMW 139 radial power plants. Eventually, the development of these engines was abandoned altogether, so they were changed to the 1580 horsepower BMW 801 models. These engines were used on the V9 variant of the plane, which flew early 1940 and eventually became the base for the production Do-217E variant. This was the first version that featured the deeper front fuselage, and it had one of the largest bomb bays on any World War II German aircraft. Being more than 6 meters long and 1 meter high, it could even accommodate the large 1000 kilogram bombs. Initially, the Do-217 was planned to use wing-mounted dive brakes, similarly to many contemporary aircraft, but that was soon changed to a petal type designed by Arado, mounted in the tail. These were integral parts of the rear fuselage, operated electrically and worked like a parachute. But there were serious concerns that the use of the air brake can overstress the tail, and they were also found to be ineffective on the heavy plane. So work started on different wing-mounted air brakes, and in parallel, a different parachute style for the tail as well. But by late 1940, the dive bombing capability was removed from the requirements, in light of the new, more accurate bomb sights. In late 1939, the RLM already ordered pre-production models from the type in 2 different configurations. And because this production order was issued before the testing of the more powerful radial engines was concluded, these models again used the Daimler DB601 engines, like the earlier prototypes. 8 units were built from the Do-217 A0 reconnaissance model, and 4 units from the C0 bomber variants. The reconnaissance models can be identified by the bulge under the fuselage, housing the cameras, and these were actually used operationally by the Luftwaffe. The C0 bomber variants were not used in combat, but they participated in bomb sight and engine testing trials. The Do-217B and D variants were never built, so the E version became the first to enter mass production, based on the V9 model. A small pre-production batch of E0 models was completed in late 1940, before deliveries of the mass-produced E1 version started later that year. And if we're talking about different models of the type, let us take a look at its variants. The V1 to V9 models were the original prototypes, with different engine configurations, including the Daimler DB601, the UMO 211, and BMW 139 and 801 models. The A0 pre-production reconnaissance variants used the Daimler DB601 engines and featured a longer bulge under the fuselage to house the cameras. The C0 was the pre-production bomber variant, with Daimler DB601 engines featuring an armament of 5 7.92mm defensive machine guns and 1 fixed 15mm machine gun in the nose, and it was capable of carrying 3000 kilograms of bombs. The E0 was the pre-production bomber variant, using the 1580 horsepower BMW 801 engines. Similar defensive armament as the C0 version, but an increased bomb load of 4000 kilograms. The E1 was the first mass-produced variant, similar to the E0. Deliveries of these models started in late 1940. The following E2 was intended as a dive bomber variant. Its defensive armament was changed to 3 7.92mm and 2 13mm machine guns, plus the 15mm forward-firing one. The E3 variant actually appeared before the E2 and featured increased armor protection for the crew and stronger armament, with 2 extra 7.92mm machine guns, bringing the total up to 7, and replacing the 15mm machine gun with a 20mm cannon in the nose. The E4 version replaced the E2 at the end of 1941, using the newer BMW 801C engines, and because the dive brakes were seen as ineffective, they were usually removed on these models. The E5 model was similar to the E4, but it was modified to be able to carry the HS-293 guided bombs under the wings. The J1 was the first night fighter variant, built with a solid nose, housing 4 7.92mm machine guns and 4 20mm cannons. It had a 3-man crew and reduced bomb load. The J2 night fighter version was similar to the J1, but it introduced the FUG-202 radar, and its bomb bay was deleted altogether. The K1 was the first variant featuring the new nose design, and it used the new 1700 horsepower BMW 801D engines. These models were intended for night bomber roles. The K2 model was modified to carry the Fritz X guided bombs. The wingspan on these models was extended to 24.5 meters. The K3 model was similar to the K2 variant, but it could carry either the Fritz X or the HS-293 guided bombs. If you would like to know more about the development and use of German guided weapons, be sure to check out my earlier videos covering the HS-293 and the Fritz X guided bombs. The M variant of the Do-217 was modified to use the 1750 horsepower Daimler DB603 engines, as the BMW engines were in short supply and mostly needed for the FW-190 fighters. The N1 Night Fighter variant was similar to the J2, but used the Daimler DB603 engines and still retained its bomb bay. Its armament consisted of 4 machine guns and 4 20mm cannons in the nose, and 2 13mm defensive machine guns. The N2 variant was similar to the N1, but its defensive armament was deleted, and instead provisions were made to install 4 20mm cannons firing upwards in a 70-degree angle. The P model was a planned high-altitude variant with a new pressurized nose section and 3-man crew. It used a unique engine system. Its 2 DB603 engines were supercharged by a third DB605 model built in the fuselage. It started flight test in June 1942, but eventually the development was abandoned in 1943. Apart from the different variants of the type, the Do-217, similarly to other German aircraft, also had numerous additional equipment kits for various roles and mission types. The Do-217 was 18.2 meters long, with a wingspan of 19 meters. It had an empty weight of 8,950 kilograms and a maximum takeoff weight of 16,480 kilograms. The bomber used 2 BMW 801 radial engines, each of them producing 1,580 horsepower. With these engines, it could reach a top speed of 516 km an hour and a cruise speed of 410 km an hour. It had a combat range of 2,300 km and a service ceiling of 9,000 meters. The plane's armament consisted of 1 forward-firing 15mm machine gun, 2 13mm machine guns in the ventral and dorsal positions, plus 3 7.92mm machine guns firing from the sides. It had a maximum bomb load of 4,000 kilograms, including the internal and external racks, while internally it could carry up to 2,500 kilograms. The first Do-217 models to enter service early 1940 were the A0 reconnaissance models, which were followed by the Bomber E variant by the end of the year. The reconnaissance variants of the type flew many information-gathering missions over the Soviet Union before Operation Barbarossa, while the Bomber variants started patrolling over the North Seas, attacking Allied shipping during 1941, and from 1942 participated in attacks against British cities. During this year, the units using the Do-217 were slowly converted to the newer M and K models and continued to fly missions over England, although they suffered heavy losses during the raids. The type also participated in anti-shipping operations and made good use of the new guided weapons like the Fritz X and HS-293. In August 1943, they managed to damage 2 ships, the HMS Landguard and HMS Bitford, and sunk the HMS Ygritte corvette. In 1944, they were flying missions over France, attacking the Allied bridgehead during the Normandy landings, but against the Allied air superiority, they again suffered heavy losses. The type was also used over the Mediterranean, both by the Luftwaffe and the Italian Air Force, who acquired 12 of these planes. But maybe the most infamous mission of the Do-217s happened in September 1943 against their former allies. After the armistice, the Italian fleet sailed out towards Malta to surrender to the Allied forces. The Germans, however, not willing to let this powerful force to fall into the hands of the Allies, sent out 11 Do-17 bombers, carrying Fritzek's anti-shipping bombs to intercept them. The three modern Italian battleships, Italia, Roma, and Vittorio Veneto, were attacked by these planes. The Roma was hit and severely damaged by a Fritzek's bomb, and soon after, a second hit exploded its magazine. The Italia was also hit, but it was luckier, and only suffered damage from the attacks, and managed to continue on her own steam. The Do-17s with the guided bombs were deployed again when the Allies landed in Italy. During the attack, the USS Savannah was hit by a bomb, which exploded under one of her turrets. The ship lost 197 men and was seriously damaged, but managed to stay afloat. The night fighter variant of the type entered service in 1942, but being a big and not particularly nimble plane, they were not very popular between the flight crews, and didn't find a lot of success. The Dornier Do was a very good bomber for its time, but it suffered from the same problems many other German designs of the time. The officials tried to push them into too many different roles. Its other problem was that it didn't really fit into any of the predetermined German aircraft categories. It was too big and slow for the fast bomber role, too small to be a real heavy bomber, and not nimble and fast enough for the night fighter role. So even though it outperformed many of its rivals, it never got the attention it deserves. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and in the comments let me know if there's any interesting events or vehicles you'd like to see.